The sugar in most oat milks, gram for gram, have a higher impact on your blood sugar than the sugar in Coca-Cola. That's not what I want to be doing in the morning. And also, most oats in this country are covered in glyphosate, which is known as weed killer, Monsanto's weed killer. It is sprayed on the crop when they're growing. It's pesticide. And that ends up in your glass. A friend of mine was breastfeeding and her child was breaking out with these like crazy rashes. She went and had her breast milk tested and they found crazy levels of glyphosate in her breast milk because of the oat milk she was drinking.
Hello and welcome to Nourish. My name is Kasha and I'm a holistic life coach and second-year doctoral student studying acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine. My mission with this podcast is to share the stories of inspiring humans who have discovered that elusive state of balance between striving for success and having that sense of interconnectedness and spirituality. Think yin and yang in flow. Now, as a former Silicon Valley burnout escapee myself, teaser, I left the tech world after 11 years of a successful career in product management. I know firsthand how difficult it can be to integrate the two. This podcast shares the stories I wish I had heard when I was struggling to find that balance and flow myself. My hope is that these interviews inspire you and give you the tools to rethink your own approach to mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. And if you are struggling, help you find your way back to authentic alignment. Now sit back, relax, and ground yourself back home, and let's get started. Hello, sweet souls, and welcome back to Nourish. Today, I have an incredible conversation for you. Rolling on the theme of incredible, inspiring women, I am beyond excited to welcome Brittany Fuisz to the Nourish Pod. Brittany is the CEO and founder of Malibu Mylk, a sustainable, allergen-free alternative milk. Brittany grew up on the beaches of Malibu, eating local produce and appreciating at a very young age that food is fuel. After graduating from Georgetown University with a degree in marketing and management, as well as graduating from the world-renowned Cordon Bleu, which is the largest network of culinary and hospitality schools in the world, Brittany trained at 3 Michelin star restaurants and the Food Network in New York, where she studied the finest techniques in the culinary world. All of this experience melds together in the cultivation of her incredible products at Malibu Mylk. So, for all of you alternative milk enthusiasts out there, myself included, this is a must listen. Not just because flax milk is so delicious, y'all, and because the nutritional science that we cover is pretty mind-blowing, but because Brittany's journey through entrepreneurship, motherhood, and balancing it all is so inspiring, filled with juicy nuggets on topics like imposter syndrome, operating as a single founder, and tips for balancing it all. That's in quotes, okay? Now, before we jump into the pod, I am beyond grateful and excited to share that Brittany also gave us, live on the call, a special code for 20% off Malibu Mylk products. The code is Nourish20. So be sure to listen to the pod and then go nourish that amazing, beautiful body of yours with some delicious, frothy, clean alternative milk products. Now, before I get all distracted by my growing craving for a matcha latte, let's jump on into it and get started. Welcome, Brittany.
Hi, I'm excited to be here.
It is such a pleasure. And I have to let you know that actually, very on brand, I made sure to run out and try Malibu Mylks before this podcast. And I'm just, I mean, if anything, this conversation is going to be incredible. But I'm just grateful that you've introduced me to my new favorite non-dairy milk.
I love hearing that. That's so great to hear. Where did you buy it? Which store?
So I went to Good Earth in Mill Valley. So
cool. Great.
Yeah.
Love it.
Amazing. I mean, it is like so frothy, and it feels like the texture is just incredible. So I'm so excited to chat with you
Yeah.
all about your journey.
Yeah, likewise, likewise. And the reason you're getting that incredible texture is because we are using the whole ground flaxseed, and flaxseed is a natural emulsifier. So it lends itself to that lovely thick texture that we may remember from cow's milk as children, for example. And we get that without adding oils. A lot of other plant-based milks add a crazy amount of oils, which cause a lot of inflammation. You don't really want to have oil in your morning smoothie or coffee, right? You just want to have whole food ingredients. And that's what we are all about at Malibu Mylk.
And I love that you're not sacrificing on like the flavor and the taste. It's delicious. All right. But we have a lot to cover. So before we jump into some of the juicy questions all about your journey and all that good stuff, I want to start with a question I ask every single guest, which is, what are 3 words that you would use to describe yourself?
Passionate, driven, and is there a word for type A? Because that's 2 words technically. But if we can
keep that.
Okay, great. There we go.
I love that. Oh, so good. So you are the CEO and founder of Malibu Mylk, which is a sustainable allergen-free alternative milk, which is I've just attested to, tastes delicious. And I know that alternative milks are all the rage, which is so exciting. Blue Bottle just announced that oat milk is going to be the default in their cafes,
Yes,
which is,
I love that you heard that. Yes.
I know. Finally, it's like the people have been heard.
Yes, they have. They have indeed.
And so I would love to hear from you. What inspired you to create an alternative milk based on flax seeds?
So it's part of a personal journey for me. It was a couple years ago, and I was actually trying to get pregnant, and I was having challenges conceiving, as a lot of people do. And so I went to see a doctor here in Los Angeles, a fertility doctor, and she took a look at my overall health, and she recommended that I go on a really strict diet called an autoimmune protocol, or otherwise known as an elimination diet. So I had to eliminate all major allergens: dairy, nuts, gluten, soy, eggs. And if you think about it, when you eliminate dairy, nuts, and soy, you've wiped out most of the milk aisle, both traditional cow's milk and most plant-based milks. And at the time, actually, oat milk had just come onto the scene. And I was like, oh, maybe I can just have oat milk. But when you're trying to get pregnant, I feel like it's one of those times and you're struggling. You're willing to do anything, right? You're like, I just want this to work. What do I need to do? Tell me someone what I need to do, and I will do it. And, after speaking to this doctor, I felt like I really needed to take a hard look at what I was consuming. Like, was I consuming, too many processed foods? Like, I wanted whole food nutrition. Like, that's really the ethos of what I believe in. And when I started looking at these other plant-based milks on the market, I realized that none of them were whole food nutrition, because the majority of plant-based milks are a blend of water, whatever ingredient it is, a nut or some other, ingredient. And then that main ingredient, let's take almond milk, for example. Almonds are blended with water. Almonds are strained out. All of the beautiful nutrition that you have occurring naturally in almonds do not end up in a glass of almond milk. Those get thrown out, and you end up with just almond flavored water. Meanwhile, almonds are incredibly unsustainable. It takes 20 gallons of water to produce one single glass of almond milk, and 80% of the world's almonds are coming from the state of California, and they're using 10% of our state's water supply. Very real issue for people like you and me who live in the state of California. Yeah. And it'd be one thing if the milk was so good for us, right? But it's not. And most almond milks have an array of other ingredients that are artificial that we don't need. So then I looked at oat milk, right? Because oat milk is technically free of gluten and nuts and soy and dairy. Problem with oat milk is most oat milks have more sugar. The sugar in most oat milks, gram for gram, have a higher impact on your blood sugar than the sugar in Coca-Cola. So what I want to be doing in the morning. And also, most oats in this country are covered in glyphosate, which is known as weed killer, Monsanto's weed killer. It is sprayed on the crop when they're growing. It's a pesticide. and that ends up in your glass. A friend of mine was breastfeeding and her child was breaking out with these like crazy rashes. She went and had her breast milk tested and they found crazy levels of glyphosate in her breast milk because of the oat milk she was drinking. If that's not horrifying, I don't know what is. So I'm learning of all this, right? Oh, and to make it even worse, the second ingredient in most oat milks and a lot of pea milks is oil. Sunflower oil, rapeseed oil, some sort of oil. Oil causes inflammation in the body. That was the one thing that I was trying to combat in getting pregnant. I wanted to decrease the inflammation in my body. As a result of our American diets today, like the way we eat, and it's not even our fault, it's the food that's available. We drove to Colorado like early COVID in 2020, and it was like a 13-hour drive from Los Angeles. And the food on the way, the only places that had food, everything was fried, covered in cheese. We're talking about like, I couldn't believe that this was being called food. And this was it. You know, there were no healthy options, not even close, no fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, nothing. So I realized that I didn't want to be consuming oat milk ever, you know, really high in calories, again, has these oils, has this glyphosate. Almond milk doesn't have any nutrition and it's not sustainable. And so I thought, God, there's got to be a better way. Enter flaxseed. I have always loved flaxseed. I would add it to smoothies or cereal, constantly looking for ways to get more fiber and omega-3s into my diet. So I went home that day after having this kind of like light bulb moment, and I pulled out my blender and I started playing with a few really simple ingredients: flaxseed, water, Himalayan salt, touch of organic vanilla extract. And I was getting this incredibly creamy, milky drink because, like I said at the start of the call, flaxseed is a natural emulsifier. So I was really excited, and I did what any aspiring entrepreneur would do. And I reached out to Whole Foods to pitch them on this idea that I had. I figured it would take, 6 months to get a meeting, and I'd get everything lined up. In the meantime, I would do all my homework. I would find a manufacturer. I would understand the consumer packaged goods model because I didn't know anything about it. The buyer responded and said, yeah, come on in next week. I panicked. I almost canceled. And I called a friend who has a product in grocery stores, and he said, you cannot cancel this meeting. If you don't take this meeting, you might not get this chance again. So I went in with little samples from my kitchen. I had a mock packaging bottle made up in Texas, and I sold the buyer on the dream that is now Malibu Mylk.
Oh my God. I love that story.
Thank you.
That is amazing. And I'm sure so inspiring for so many of our listeners, myself included, listening to this live. I have so many follow-up questions, but before we dive into some of the kind of entrepreneurial stuff, I'd love for you to talk about why is inflammation such a crucial part of, I guess, our overall health? If you can talk to that, because I know sugar is inflammatory. The pesticides we eat are inflammatory.
Oils are inflammatory. Yeah.
The oils that you talked about. Yeah. Like, why is that so important? Because I know our listeners are probably like, ew, that doesn't sound great, but why should I really worry about it?
I think it's all about having your body operate in the most optimal form possible. And we want that whether we're trying to get pregnant, whether we're trying to run a marathon, or whether you're just trying to get through the day, right? Like life can be exhausting. I have 2 little kids right now. Like that's exhausting. You want your body to be able to operate at its peak performance. And I think we forget that you are what you eat, right? That's a very old saying that's very true. And if you don't think it's true, just do a very simple test. Have a salad one day for lunch, and the next day go have a burger and fries and see how you feel. You're going to want to nap after the burger and fries. So, having your body in its optimal position means trying to combat inflammation. Some inflammation, is normal. Like if you break a bone, if you sprain an ankle, you're going to get some inflammation around that area. That's why we ice injuries to bring down inflammation and to support the healing process. You can't really ice your insides though, that people try. That's the ice bath. That's, I think, where that came from. But, you will feel better without inflammation in the body. You will feel lighter. You will feel, you will just feel your best. And that's what's so magical about our milk. It's really it was created to be a product that helps you feel and look, because flaxseed actually has great beauty attributes as well. So to feel and look your very best, because that's what we want in our foods now. That's what we should be looking for. And it shouldn't be so hard. We got it backwards in the US for a while, but we're finally, I think, starting to turn that around.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I just want to translate this, since I am studying Chinese medicine, from the Chinese medicine point of view, that inflammation causes that heat that causes just such a spew of diseases. And I mean, it can even be seen in the example that you shared with, if you're a mother that's consuming glyphosate and it's causing rashes in your child, that rash is an example of like heat coming to the surface, like your skin's trying to release what shouldn't be there. And so I think that's just such like a concrete example of like, you are what you eat. And like, if your body is not receiving it, it's trying to eliminate it, and it's going to show up in crazy ways, may it be a rash or fertility issues. So I'm so glad.
The skin is such a good example, because people are always like, why am I getting this rash? Why is my skin breaking out? Why, and skin is usually the first place that you'll start to see signs of problems from the inside.
100%. Well, I'm so glad you're tackling this. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So I'm curious, it sounds like you are a solo founder. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Oof. Oh my gosh. Can you talk a little bit about that journey of becoming a founder? Was it something that you always wanted? Like, what was that pivot like? And what was it like doing it alone?
So it is a journey. I actually did have someone helping me for a bit. So I came up with the idea. I knew I wanted to do this. I met a girl randomly through a friend in LA who had just moved here. And it was just before I got this Whole Foods meeting. And I was like, oh, I have this idea. I'm making this flax milk, and she was asking all the right questions. And I was like, would you want to help me with it? So there was somebody who was involved with me for a couple of months, but she ended up having some pretty severe health issues. So she was only able to participate at the full kind of co-founder level for probably about 4 months. We're still good friends, and she's still involved in the business. Not on like a fully day-to-day basis, but on like a more casual basis. But she's awesome and super supportive. For me in the beginning, I did want someone to help me. And, even though she was only involved for 4 months, that 4-month time was very crucial, because it was a time at which, when you're starting something, sometimes I found, at least for me, that you don't know what to do. It's like, well, what do I do first? Like where does one start? And for me, having someone that would hold me accountable, like we would plan when we decided we were doing this, it was like, all right, let's start tomorrow. We'll work together from 9 to 5 or whatever it was. We got together, and just sitting down with someone for that stretch of the time during the day and saying, well, we don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to figure it out. We're going to do something. We are going to be held accountable for the next 8 hours, and we are going to try to push this forward in one way or another. And in the beginning, what we did that was super helpful was we would call on somebody in the industry, and it didn't even need to be somebody who had plant-based milk. I tried to call on some other women founders who have a plant-based milk company. They wouldn't get back to me. I think that's not so nice. I had a woman founder reach out to me 2 weeks ago who's starting a plant-based milk, and she asked for a phone call, and I said, sure. Like I am happy to share my learnings. And I think, we all have to help rise each other up. And there is plenty of room for more than one plant-based milk, especially from female founders. So we would take people to lunch who had products in grocery stores and just take a notebook and grill them and ask all these questions. And how did you get into this grocery store? And tell me about distribution, and tell me about margins, and tell me about pitching buyers. And we would just sit with a notebook at lunch, and we would treat them to lunch. And it was the most helpful thing. And we learned so much. And then, we would go back, and it was little things like trademarking the brand and finding a lawyer who could do that for us, and learning how to certify something organic, and finding a formulationist that could help you take your recipe from your kitchen to a manufacturing facility, finding the manufacturing facility, getting the manufacturing facility to answer the phone, which is actually very hard to do. So it was really helpful in the beginning for me to have that grounding relationship that forced me every day to be accountable. It is hard now being a solo. It has been hard for the last 2.5 years being a solo founder, especially as I have been pregnant and birthed 2 children, because there's nobody to kind of lean on during that process. But as you can probably tell just already in this conversation, I have a very strong personality, and like I feel like I do have those leadership skills and like just personality traits. So it's a fit for me to be in the founder role. It's a fit for me to delegate and to have a team. And ultimately, I think if someone's like considering, do I do this alone? Do I need help? You can always just hire someone, right? At the beginning, that's hard if you don't have money. And I wanted to be as lean as possible. So I didn't want to spend money on I wanted to see where I could get. I wanted to go out and fundraise. So I didn't want to hire an employee that I would have to pay. So for me, again, like this idea of having a co-founder was great. And for a lot of people, it's great. It's just finding the right personality fit, which can be very challenging. I like looking for co-founders that you are not friends with. I think that that's better personally. I think, and there's people who disagree with that, but I think it can be messy to have it be a friend. And a lot of times these relationships go south. I've seen it with very close relationships in my life when people have tried to work together. So I would say, and there's groups for this now, like there's groups like online where you can go and look for co-founders, and maybe they have the idea, maybe you have the idea, and you just want someone to help you. So I think that, there are resources to find that person if you're looking for them.
Yeah. And, it's incredible hearing you speak, because you obviously are very type A. You literally used it to describe yourself. So I'm curious, did you experience like self-doubt, fear, imposter syndrome, or is that just something that you have luckily evolved away from? And yeah,
I don't think that's possible. We all have that, right? We all have the self-doubt, and I still have it. And it's so funny because, I've done several of these podcasts in the last few months, and it almost feels, what's the word for this? I don't want to say disingenuine, because like I have a real business now, and we're in 1,000 grocery stores, and we're going to be in 1,500 grocery stores by the end of August, and we're all over the country. And you can subscribe and buy the milk online. And I do want to give your listeners a code, so don't let me forget to do that. But I don't feel like I've made it. I'm still on the journey, and it's still really hard and really stressful and really scary and really exhausting. And I look at my friends who have really comfy jobs at Netflix, and I'm like, oh God, they're getting 6-month paid maternity leave, and they have this great company that they know they can count on. And like, I have employees that are counting on me, and I have my children that are counting on me. So it's a lot of pressure, and it is not for the faint of heart. It is very stressful, but generally I love what I'm doing, and I love our product. My husband asked me a couple weeks ago, he was like, if Malibu Mylk didn't exist, what would we drink? And I said, I don't think we would drink plant-based milk, because there's nothing that comes close to what we are doing.
And that's such a beautiful mission to get behind and to have that purpose there. So I appreciate you sharing that. So I guess seeing as, a lot of the listeners here, since a core theme of this podcast is not just like balancing both sides of like your ambitious side with your inner knowing side for all the type A's out there, but also kind of navigating life transitions, because, you have to take those leaps of faith to pursue a mission like the one that you're on. So for those kind of moments where you have doubt, fear, imposter syndrome, what helps you?
Such a good question. I love this question. Excellent question.
Yeah.
I will lean on my support group. Oh my God, I have that same water bottle. It's my favorite water bottle.
It's meant to be. I have the flax milk on one side, and I have the water on the other.
World's largest glass straw water bottle that I could find. And I go through like 5 of them a day. I love it.
Oh,
That's so funny.
same. It's like, I mean, I've like mastered the art of not having to go to the bathroom very often,
Yes,
which is not
right?
good.
I know.
But if you're drinking this much, you can't be going every half hour. Anyway, I digress. Tell
No,
me, what are your tools?
Share what is that water bottle? I'm like, wait, we should link to that water bottle because it really is.
We will.
Actually, we are making water bottles with our logo that are going to be ready in like, I think a week or two.
Stop.
That are huge with the Malibu Mylk in their glass. I'm super excited. And that bottle.
Oh my gosh. I am excited too.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. All right. Well, we'll definitely link to that too.
Back to that. Yeah. All right. So what do I do when I'm having these moments of self-doubt? I have been in therapy for the last, 8 years or something like that. Once a week with a therapist. During COVID, obviously, they became phone calls rather than in person. I think that's important for just self-growth and like recognizing your own issues, struggles, etc. My therapist is a great, support person for me. My husband is also an entrepreneur. And so I will lean on him for support when I'm having a self-doubt moment. There was something like 2 days ago, and I was like really having, the highs and lows of the peaks and the valleys of this journey are so intense. Like I will go from feeling like I'm on top of the world, and then literally the next day I feel like it's all over. And so I was having a moment where I felt like it was all over. Yeah. And I called my husband and he was like, I'm busy. And I'm like, no, I have to talk to you. And I was like, on the phone with an investor and like literally had tears running down my face. My investor didn't know that, obviously, like I held it together, but like I was feeling vulnerable and, like I was in a corner and like there was nowhere to go. And so I'll call my husband. I do have some really incredible women within the space that I have met who will answer the phone and talk to me when I'm having that kind of a moment. I think it's important to find someone who is in a similar life stage. So that's not necessarily your best friend. Like maybe your best friend is in a similar life stage. Like most of my girlfriends have, a few young children as well. And they have like the struggles of like, balancing that and like their homes and their marriage and, just all the things that come with the young children. And they're great resources for what do I do when my kid is having a meltdown and now I have another kid and, things like that. But I'm a working mom and I have my own company. So I find it really helpful to find other working moms who've built their own companies because it's very specific and very relatable. To talk to somebody, who doesn't have their own company, it's just different. And it doesn't mean that you can't relate to that sort of person as well. But I do find the ones who are, really in a similar place to be helpful. I'll also meditate when I was doing it very regularly for a while. I'm not doing it as regularly now, but I did it long enough that I can tell myself to take deep breaths. And the fact that I can remind myself to do that, it's a very powerful tool that we all have. Every single one of us can pause at any moment and say, I'm going to just take a few deep breaths. And what it does for you. And now I'll tell my toddler, or I'll take a deep breath and I'm hoping he hears me and takes one. It can be very calming, and it doesn't change everything, but it can just ground you for a moment. And then there was a podcast I was on recently and she said, like, what do you do, to like feel your best, whatever. I think it's really important that when you get caught up in this cycle of running around, trying to do it all, that you do a few self-care things that make you feel good. For me, I need to get my daily steps in. Ideally, it's 10,000. It's not usually 10,000 because I don't have that much time. But even if I just get 6,000, 5,000, if I just go around the block for 20 minutes, like at least I've done that, cleared my head. Sometimes I'll do it on a call. Sometimes I'll take one of the kids. I do that. I try to get a manicure or a pedicure, generally a pedicure, but I try to do that once a month because it just makes me feel better. Like it's something little that like I will do for myself. And I realize like, this is really important that I carve out the time for this something. It's really silly, stupid thing. And maybe for somebody else, maybe it's not a pedicure or a walk, but maybe it's cooking a really great dinner. Maybe it's baking a banana bread. Maybe it's going for lunch with a friend, like finding those things that bring you joy and and help you to be a joyous person will help everything in your life to flow in a more fluid manner.
That is fantastic advice. And I actually want to zoom in on something that you mentioned, because you mentioned it earlier as well, which is having that support system. But also, it sounds like you're offering that support to others. As you mentioned, you spoke with an entrepreneur recently. And I find it so kind of empowering and fascinating, this perspective that you have on you're entering like a competitive category, right? Where there are a lot of alternative milks out there. As you mentioned, they are all the rage. And you have this, it sounds like, incredible balanced mindset, being like, there's enough space for us to all be there. I'm curious, did you always have this mindset? And like, how do you find that you can kind of balance, being a type A competitive business owner in a saturated space and not kind of allowing like scarcity mindset and things like that to get in the way?
I think I probably got it from my parents. My parents were both entrepreneurs and they were very giving. My dad probably to a fault. He passed away a long time ago, but I was born in Ohio. My parents are from the Midwest and they are givers. They were both givers. And so I don't know, it's not my nature to like, ooh, this is, there are proprietary things about my milk that like I wouldn't share, but it's not what's proprietary that makes it really hard. It's everything else, it's finding a co-packer, getting line time, finding money, marketing the product, branding the product, getting the meetings with the buyers. Like, this is a marathon and it is really tough. And if somebody else thinks they've got the chops, like, you go for it. And and it is so hard, the stamina that you need to do this. So I don't know. I'm just like, I'm not worried about it. It's not, I've never been that way. Like, I'm not like with my husband, I'm not jealous or worried. Like, it's just not, it's not my nature. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, are you, if your husband's traveling to New York alone, no, it doesn't like, it's just not, I don't know. Like, there's other things that I worry about. That is not one of them. Like, we all have things that we worry about, right? Like, worry and anxiety is a part of my life. For a long time, it really wasn't. But as I've gotten older, and I think, and as the stakes have gotten higher, like, I have children now that are dependent on me, right? Like, things get scarier. You realize how valuable health is, and, health scares. My God, there's nothing worse. So I have anxieties, but they are not around, is somebody going to try to like steal my idea? Like, there's bigger fish to fry, in my opinion.
I love that. And I do want to call that out because I hear it so frequently. And like, I even witness it like amongst peers and colleagues, like whether it be in the tech space, which is where I worked before, or now like in the health and wellness space, there is this like, not everybody feels this way, but there is like this general kind of sense in the whole entrepreneurial space, like, who are your competitors? What are they up to? Right. And you're kind of looking out for that, and especially in a market that is filled with other competitors, that can be kind of distracting. But I remember and
listen, that's such a good point, right? Like, you do have to keep an eye on your competitors and what they're doing and the trends. But I mean, it's really interesting. Actually, recently there's one other flax milk company and it's called Good Karma. And I recently called their CEO and I just wanted to say hello. And because we're both,
that's amazing.
And he was so friendly and receptive and lovely. And we had a conversation and it was like, maybe there's synergies for us someday. Maybe there's not, but like, I have a cell phone number now and like, we can chat and, it doesn't, we're both trying to create a great product that makes people feel better. And like, that's awesome. And so I think if you put that type of energy out there, you're going to get that energy back. And that's really impactful.
Oof, I love that. That is so true. I mean, just hearing you talk about it, right? Like, immediately sends out this like vibe on my end, being like, there is space for I mean, I fundamentally believe it. It's not something that I always believed, but I think there was like this one CEO that I used to work for who said, ideas are cheap, execution is everything. And you just spoke to it.
That is I love that. What a great quote. I see exactly. It's true. It's all about the execution. It's all about the execution.
So I'm curious, actually, shifting gears a little bit, because you mentioned this a couple of times. You're obviously a mother. Congratulations. And, it sounds like balancing a lot, right? As kind of a mom and a type A personality. When you became a mother, what was that whole experience like, kind of balancing both the entrepreneurial side along with like what is a very nourishing, maternal, maybe like slower experience, like even, your brain changes when you become pregnant. And I would love for you to speak to this and kind of be an inspiration for a lot of the women listening out there who might be like, WTF is happening to me right now.
Yeah, no, I get it. You know what's really interesting? And I'm going to answer your question, but I want to kind of add something to it. When I'm a Tory Burch fellow, Tory Burch has this unbelievable organization, and she basically chooses 50 women founders every year and gives them an educational grant and resources to help grow their businesses. And I was a Tory Burch fellow in 2020, and she just had a conference in New York recently.
Congratulations. Wow.
It's such a cool thing. When I was at this conference in New York in June of this year, I looked around the table, and most of these women were in their 40s, if not older, like late 30s, mid 40s. And I went over to the program organizer and I said, I have to ask you, do you guys like select on like certain like age criteria? Like, why is everybody like, older? Not that that's old by any means, but they're not like, these 20-year-old techie. And they said, no.
Love that, by the way.
Yeah. They said, we have found that most women start businesses once they're at a place in their life where they feel more secure, they're a little more established. Most of them are mothers. It was so fascinating. And I think that being a mother, a working mother, is the hardest thing that I have ever done, ever. But in a way, it's very grounding to the present moment, because when you walk away from your work, even if it's for 10 minutes, I work from home. So I'll go downstairs and I'll, spend 10 minutes with my son. I have lunch with him every day, which I love most days, not every day, but when I don't have a lunch meeting. And to have even 10 minutes of time with him, children are so present. They're so in the present moment. And it pulls you back into this present moment, with whatever spirals and work anxiety and pressure you're having, it brings you back to this moment and listen, not every moment is great. Some of those moments with them are, they're tantruming and screaming, and those are hard moments. But in general, it's about being present. And so I think that's really, really wonderful, but it's really hard. It is so freaking hard. Words. And I will sometimes envy women who I know who don't have to work. They don't want to work. They're choosing not to work, whether their family's supporting them, their husbands are supporting them, and they are 150% focused on the mom thing. And that's hard too, right? That's hard for other reasons, because you don't really have an escape, right? Like, I get to say, you know what, I'm going up and I'm doing a podcast right now, and everybody leave me F alone, because I get to do some, right? Like, that's nice for me. I love that I get to have that separation mentally. But like I said, I do envy sometimes these women who aren't working, who just get to be mommy all the time and have that be their focus. Because I think what's hard is I think it was either yesterday or the day before, when I was having that hard work moment, I don't want my children to feel that. I don't want them to see that stress in me. I don't want them to be affected by that. And it's hard to not have it cross over. I really try, but that's challenging. I want them to see mommy happy and easy-go-lucky. And the reality of owning your own business is like, you're not that way all the time. There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of pressure.
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for naming the envy because I feel like, there's like this kind of motherhood is painted in this very specific way, right? And there isn't usually a lot of room for like envying women who, let's say, have the opportunity to focus on motherhood or vice versa. And like calling that out, I think is like so empowering for women to know that like that range of the emotions that they might be feeling, like that they're not alone in that.
Totally.
So you mentioned like you don't want it's such a, by the way, like very admirable thing to not just like be experiencing the highs and the lows, but then trying to like keep it steady and balanced for your kids. I just want to acknowledge, like, I know that cannot be easy. Do you find yourself, I don't know, like turning the Brittany that's a CEO mode on or off throughout the day? Do you find yourself blending it throughout the day? You know, like, especially after perhaps you've given birth, like there's just like the physiological reality of like, oh, maybe you need to go breastfeed your child now. Like, how did you, and how do you allow both of these parts of your personality to coexist?
Oh, that is the $1 million question. You know, it's easiest when you do one day at a time, right? Like, I think if you think about the next few months, year, whatever, trying to manage it all, it's super overwhelming. But if I think about today and the fact that my 4-month-old we have an au pair who lives with us, because you have to have help when you're working at this level. And if I just focus on the now, it's usually manageable. I am a breastfeeding mom and it's really important to me. And, I think the latest recommendations from the, whatever it is, American Academy or Pediatrics, they're now recommending that you breastfeed for 2 years. I'm not going to do that. I don't have that kind of time, but I do want to do it for a while. And I had a conference in New York, as I mentioned, and I was meeting with the Whole Foods buyer while I was in New York, and I had 2 conferences and that I'm breastfeeding, who's 3 months old. And if you leave the baby and you try to go and pump, and I know women who've done that, and you get mastitis, you get infections, so I decided the baby was coming with me, and that's what I did. And,
yeah, girl.
Yeah, it wasn't perfect, and I brought the au pair as well, because I had to. And my husband stayed with my son here, but it wasn't perfect and it wasn't easy, but that's what we did. And we made it work. And this time is so fleeting. She's not going to be breastfeeding forever. She's probably not going to be breastfeeding. She's definitely not going to be breastfeeding a year from now. And I don't want to miss it. And I think it's really important that we empower one another as women, because it is so hard to do both. And working from home allows me the ability to breastfeed and to do all these other things, because if I was in an office all day, I don't think I could do it. It would be too hard. So.
Oof. Well, you are such an inspiring leader. I love it. You're like paving the path, not just for this incredible product, but also for women everywhere. Like, just hearing this, for me is inspiring. I know it's so inspiring for the audience. So thank you for sharing all of this. I want to bring it back home, because like, as excited as I am about you as this leader and this beautiful product that you brought into the world and the way that you're running your business, I want to hear, what are you excited about, with Malibu Mylk? I know you have, it sounds like, some exciting cups coming out that I'm definitely going to snatch up. Tell me what is exciting you, what's coming up in the whole world of Malibu Mylks that you'd like to share with the audience.
First off, we have these incredible coffee and matcha canned ready-to-drink lattes.
Ooh.
You can find them on our website. If you're in Southern California, they're also in grocery stores down here. They are 8-ounce cans, Japanese ceremonial grade matcha, organic coffee extract. They are incredible. They are only 60 calories a can. They are loaded with fiber. We like to say that they are the number one way to go number 2. And they are gentle.
Very important, by the way. Very important.
Very important, right? Talking about like having your body look and feel its best. That's a very important
That's
piece.
how you detox, right?
Yep.
It has to come out. If it doesn't come out those types of ways, it comes out on your skin and everything.
Yeah, exactly. So those are new. Again, you can find them on our website. And before we forget, I want to give your listeners a code. What do you recommend?
Yes.
Something 20 for 20% off their first order.
Okay. I'm not great on the spot with like creative names.
Do you want to do like your name? Would that make sense?
Yeah, we'll do Nourish 20.
Perfect.
If you haven't used that before. Yes, Nourish 20. And I'm obviously going to link this in the show notes, but hopefully everybody knows how to spell Nourish.
20. I love it. Everyone will know it. NURISH. And it is 20% off your first order at malibumylk.com. And
Yay.
we have shelf stable packaging. So it'll come to your front door and you just store it in your pantry and then pop it in the fridge before you're ready to use it. And it's perfect.
I love that. And you have these mugs coming out, which I'm going to definitely be getting.
We have 4 flavors of our milk. So we have an unsweetened vanilla, unsweetened. We have a flax oat blend. We are using oats that are unsweetened, organic, and glyphosate free. So if you're an oat fanatic and you're like, I need my oat fix, but you're like paranoid about everything I just told you about oat milk, try our oat milk. It's a great way to lean into flax, to try it out. And then we have our slightly sweetened, which is only sweetened with organic dates. And it's actually our team favorite. It's our newest flavor. There's only 4 grams of sugar per serving. It's free of refined sugar. It is so good. And I have so many people who tell me they drink it all on its own. They love that they're getting fiber, omega-3s, protein in every single glass. So yeah, give us a try. If you were in a lot of grocery stores, but like I said, you can use Nourish 20 and you'll get some of the best pricing just on our website.
Oh, I'm so excited about this. I cannot wait to try the matcha blend because I did not see that at Good Earth. So yes, this is so incredible. Brittany, I could truly speak with you for hours, but I know you have a busy day out there. You're taking it one day at a time with kids and the business. So thank you so, so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This was a blast.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Nourish. If you enjoyed this conversation, please leave a positive review. Your rating really helps the podcast grow, and your feedback means the world to me. I publish new episodes twice a month, so hit the subscribe button to be notified. Finally, if you'd like to learn more about the work I do as a holistic counselor or to connect, please head over to my website or my Instagram at Mira_wellness_co. I love speaking with each and every one of you. Thanks again for being a listener and see you next time.